even women themselves with endometriosis aren't aware of some of the things to look out for and how to advocate for themselves. So it's really important that we also educate employers. You know, we spend a lot of our time in the workplace. So I'm here today to help people understand endometriosis from some of the facts and stats, but also give top tips as well.
I'd like to welcome you all to the Lunch and Learn for this month with Verve Healthcare. Delighted to be able to talk about a really interesting and thought-provoking subject at the moment. And for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you'll see that our very special guest expert, Vicki Hodges from Pausefully, has joined us following a brief trip to the BBC Breakfast Studio. So perhaps you can tell us a bit about that in your intro, Vicki. So thanks very much for joining us. We've got half an hour today to talk about endometriosis, what employers and employees need to know. And Vicki, if you can just start by just giving a little intro for yourself.
Thank you so much, Steve. I try and keep it short because I am so passionate about endometriosis. I could talk for days on it, but I'm really grateful to be here to help raise awareness and educate around the topic. Even women themselves with endometriosis aren't aware of some of the things to look out for and how to advocate for themselves. So it's really important that we also educate employers. You know, we spend a lot of our time in the workplace. So I'm here today to help people understand endometriosis from some of the facts and stats, but also give top tips as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And that really ties in with Verve Healthcare's health and wellbeing ethos, putting patients first and looking after people the best we possibly can. So great, thank you. I know, Vicki, you've got a presentation. I don't know if you want to. Oh, you beat me to it. So let's share. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you. I've got some questions, and if any of the audience members have got questions along the way, please do put them in, and we'll try and answer as many as possible at the time or at the end of the presentation. Alternatively, we'll collate all the questions and respond accordingly afterwards. So over to you, Vicki.
Thank you so much. So I will be talking, like I say, about endometriosis, what employers need to know, but also employees. Endometriosis is something that affects a huge proportion of women globally. But I just wondered if anybody listening could come off mute or maybe have it in their head or type in the chat box, you know, how many percentage of women in the UK do you think are affected by endometriosis? So the answer is 10%. And that 10% are the ones that have been diagnosed. So actually there's a huge more, amount of women that actually are living with endometriosis and just don't know it yet or haven't been diagnosed with it. So 1 in 10 women. So you will definitely know somebody, be a loved one, a friend or a colleague that's got endometriosis. And that's why it's so important. It affects everybody. So what actually is endometriosis? Well, it's known as a menstrual health problem, but it's really a full body condition. So the way I describe it is it's a chronic condition. It's often painful, but what it actually is the cells that grow and line your uterus, similar cells to that grow outside of the uterus. So it can be found on usually areas around the pelvis, so on your ovaries, it can be a bowel, bladder, fallopian tubes, your abdominal wall, but sometimes it grows even further up, your lungs, your heart. It's even been found in the eyes, the brain. So really, it's not only found all over the body, but it can affect your whole body. It causes inflammation. So much as if when you're having a period, that lining of your uterus has a shedding stage and it comes out as a period, the growth of that similar tissue has nowhere to go. So it sheds and bleeds internally. That causes inflammation and pain, and that happens monthly. So we know that it's a chronic illness, but it's often hidden. so we don't often see what's going on internally. You know, sometimes you can look in pain, and sometimes it doesn't mean that you are in pain. A lot of women with endo don't suffer much pain, and they can go through you know, years of their life and suddenly try for a child and find out they've got stage 4, and it's causing it's deep infiltrating and causing infertility. So that's one of the things it can cause. So yeah, it's dynamic, it's different for everybody. The stage 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is the least severe, where it's not that many adhesions, it's really contained. And then stage 4, which is your most severe, which is affecting multiple organs, deep infiltrating, and the adhesions and the adhesions and lesions are affecting a lot of your pelvic area. And the problem is it takes up to 7 to 10 years for diagnosis, which is far too long. And the problem is that at the moment, the gold standard for diagnosis is something called a laparoscopy, which is surgery. And, you know, as much as they can try and stop people going through, you know, really invasive surgery, they will. But not much research has been done. Women's health in itself doesn't have much funding and research done into it. Endometriosis, definitely not. So we need more, and people are doing that, where they're researching how we can help diagnose quicker and easier and less invasive. And there is no cure. So it's lifelong. And it's definitely more than just a bad period. So what you're looking at is excessive menstrual cramps. They don't just happen around your period, they can happen throughout the month as well. It's pain that interferes with your everyday life, so it's affecting the quality of life. It could be that you've got abnormal bleeds or really heavy bleeding, such as flooding. You're using 1 to 2 menstrual products per hour. And you can get something called endobelly, which is where the inflammation causes your belly to bloat. It can affect, like I say, your bowel and your bladder, so you can have painful urinary problems or bowel movements, and even pain during sex. Because of the inflammation, it causes fatigue. It can really play havoc with your mental health, dealing with this all, and even depression. And like I said before, it definitely interferes with your infertility. Into 50% of cases, it can cause infertility. So why am I so passionate about this? Well, both of those pictures of me, one is looking slightly more glamorous than the other. The one on the left is me after my second surgery, looking very sorry for myself. But actually, that is when I got to see a really good gynecologist, and I'd had really positive surgery done on my bowel bladder to remove all my endometriosis. And then, you know, it's something that I've lived with ever since I was a teenager. I've been constantly dismissed by the medical professionals, and it got to the stage where it really was impacting my life, my relationships, my friendships, my work. I didn't have a supportive employer at the time. We're going back 20 years. And I kind of had to give up my job because of the condition. So now I'm really passionate about campaigning, educating, and raising awareness. So the picture is me on the right at the BBC this month. I was invited on to the BBC Breakfast Sofa to talk about the work I do and help raise awareness. And I continue to do this personally with women one-to-one, but also within workplaces. The reason I do this is it's not just a personal issue. You know, obviously it affects me and women personally, and it's not just a tick box exercise that employees have to do. It really makes business sense. You know, like menopause that has given the spotlight much more in the last few years. It's for the same reasons. You know, endometriosis can affect your day-to-day life, and obviously you can't always separate your life to work, and you sometimes bring in, you know, especially with health conditions, chronic health conditions like endometriosis, it will affect your work. So we know that it's decreased productivity. You're looking at higher absenteeism, presenteeism, high staff turnover. It causes a knock-on effect to your team, and also you risk tribunals around employee well-being. So let's go into some stats. We're looking at 1.5 million people in the UK affected by endometriosis, but that's personally affected. If you look to the knock-on effect of how many that, you know, their loved ones or colleagues, it's a ripple effect of, you know, absolutely billions of people are going to be affected. And in fact, 190 million globally have endometriosis. It's a huge issue we've got. And there's a study done by CIPD back a couple of years ago, and it looked into the effects of endometriosis in the workplace. 50% said that it had reduced productivity, and 70% felt that their employer just didn't understand and weren't supportive. 3% considered leaving work, actually left work, sorry, and 5% considered leaving work due to that. And 7% actually felt discriminated against, which is shocking. And we know that if you lose just one employer, the cost of recruiting and retraining and building that team back up, the cost starts at like £30,000. And you may say, well, you know, this discrimination, is it really an issue for the workplace? Yes, totally. There was a case with menopause back a couple of years ago where a lady called Karen Farhoxson, she actually successfully won her case against her employer, who just said, you know, it's just menstrual health, get on with it, very dismissive. And in the end, she won, I think it was like 30-something thousand, I think £38,000 against her employer. I mean, these aren't common, but they do happen. So it's something you need to take into consideration, that now endometriosis can be classified as a disability if it causes, you know, substantial or long-term negative effects on your ability to perform, and then all the other employment laws as well that backs up your female staff.
I think, sorry to interrupt, I think it's interesting if you look at women's health over the years, including menopause. I've run webinars on these subjects before, and a lady says to me, well, why do you do it? You're a man.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, but I've got a wife, I've got a mother, I've got a mother-in-law, I've got colleagues, I've got people all around me, friends that have had issues that are really important. And actually, the naivety of some people needs to be brought to the fore.
Yeah, totally. And that moves me very well onto, you know, what can you do? I mean, this is for employers. What can employers do? But this also knocks onto, you know, if you're more compassionate and more aware of it, it's going to affect everybody in your life. So what can you do? Well, employers can start with awareness. So educate everybody. Include endometriosis in the workplace. When you're talking about menopause, to also talk about endometriosis, put posters up, put information out, send newsletters, show that you're being supportive, start having these conversations, reduce the stigma. So have that safe space where people can actually feel like you can have the conversations. 46% of women said they felt really uncomfortable talking to their manager about menstrual health. So it's something that needs to be addressed, but it's having that safe space for the woman to feel like they're able to talk about it. Flexible working, I know is not, you know, able to be doing in certain jobs, but when you can, flexible working can just mean giving more breaks. If you're sat down for a long time and you've got cramps, you know, allow them to get up and take more breaks, or if they're feeling fatigued, give them a room they can have for quiet. Access to wellness resources, even putting, you know, period products in the staff toilets, painkillers, hot water bottles, changes of clothes in case people flood through their clothes, but also been aware that if you've got a uniform policy where the clothing is white maybe and there's a risk of you bleeding through, that sensitivity, or even if you've got a tight uniform where you've got endobelly, which is where I said you've got the inflammation, maybe consider having a looser uniform, or two different sizes of uniform for that person on those days. And it's really about adding endometriosis to your policies to support employees. train managers how to approach and support employees, and use it as an excuse to add that education to onboarding. So here are my top tips for having those sensitive conversations. Always approach with empathy and confidentiality. Don't just blurt it out in front of everybody, because not everybody may want to talk about it. So take them to a quiet, safe space where they feel able to. And if they don't want to talk about it, that, don't make assumptions that they do, and don't make assumptions that everybody's experiences are the same, because they're not. One person with endometriosis does not suffer the same as another. Beware of your body language and your tone. Like I say, offer practical solutions, like we're putting period products in the toilets. We're going to give you more break times, but also ask your employees, what do you want? Don't just make those suggestions. Actually get feedback. What is working for you and what would work for you? Because then it makes people feel supported, involved in that conversation. People that are doing this well are the co-op. They are truly leading by example. They have recently introduced policies to support employees with all menstrual health problems. So they've done flexible working, additional paid leave. So quite often you'll need to go to the doctor quite a lot for scans, the hospital appointments, and quite often they can't be done outside of work time and you lose that money. So additional paid leave and those free period products. And it's just normalizing the conversations, reducing that stigma, making people feel valued. And going back to that, 3% of people are leaving. It really is helping keep staff retention. So how do I help? I offer a full range of resources. So I can come to your workplace, or I can do webinars online around awareness training for managers, HR, and for the employees and colleagues themselves. I also do endometriosis champion training, whereas I train 1 or 2 people in your organisation to be the go-to endo champion. So they feel they don't want to speak to HR or their manager. They've got a go-to person who really understands endometriosis, lived experience or not. I also do fertility coaching, which is one-to-one personal coaching, and I can help you with your policy as well. Somebody that I've worked with recently is Camden Council, and it's really, really helped them increase the awareness, reduce absenteeism, and they thank me so much. They thought at first it may be like a tick in the box exercise, but actually they were really surprised the results and the conversations opened up because of it, and how many people really truly were affected by endometriosis and they had no idea. And there's so many benefits. I haven't covered a few in this presentation, but you can see here from this slide, there's just so much that it's going to help your workplace. But like Steve said, it's a knock-on effect to your whole life, everybody around you. So yeah, if you want any more information, that's how you can find me. And I want to thank Verve Health so much for Verve Healthcare, for giving me this platform and allowing me to help raise awareness of endometriosis.
Thank you. Yeah, and you're very welcome, Vicky, and that was insightful for sure. I've got a couple of questions before we wrap up. One is, what are the most common misconceptions about endometriosis that you encounter?
That it's just a period problem. Just get on with it. It's just a bit of a heavy period or a bit of pain. Shall I stop sharing so you can? It's totally more than that. It's a whole body condition, a whole life condition. It affects everybody in different ways, but it really does have a detrimental impact to women's lives. Like I say, to fertility, to your energy levels, productivity, your relationships. It can affect, pain during sex. So, just literally everything is affected. Migraines, your skin. I could go on, but it's totally more than just a bad period.
Yeah, and in terms of how things have changed along the years, do you see that there is more insight and more understanding of endometriosis and what happens to women in this situation?
There definitely is a change. I mean, even the last year, the last month, the BBC have been doing huge amounts. ITV covered today on Radio 1 and 2. You know, there is so much more coverage now, and I'm so grateful for it. But, you know, a lot more needs to be done. Change can't happen fast enough. You know, there's the gynecology wait list in the UK are just, you know, grown huge amounts over the last few years. So we, you know, raising awareness is just the start of it.
Yep.
So much needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And when you're speaking to an HR professional who wants to sort of champion endometriosis and make it a better workplace for support and assistance, what advice would you give them?
I would say start having the conversations, start reading up and educating yourself on how it can affect others. Understand about having sensitive conversations where you truly listen to that person and put into place things that can work for them. Get feedback from your colleagues, because like I say, it's okay to presume things, but everybody's different. So actually do a survey in your office about what would help you in this situation.
Okay, great, thank you. And what about, you mentioned earlier the champion training. How does that work in practice?
So that starts next year. One or two people from your organisation come along. It's an online thing. It's a day training where they learn all about endometriosis, really deep dive into the stats, but more than what we've done today, into how to have those sensitive conversations, how to be a true ally in the endo space. And like I say, you don't have to have a lived experience, but just be passionate about making change.
And where do you think the responsibility for employers sits?
Hugely. I mean, it's crucial. You can't ignore it. It totally makes business sense. I mean, you have to look after the well-being of your employees. Employees nowadays they seek out employers that do look after their employee health, that have EAPs in place, you know, private medical, raise awareness, have it in their onboarding. Yeah, so I think it's absolutely crucial, and it definitely lies in employers' hands as much as it does for women to advocate for themselves. But you need allies in your side as well, especially when you spend so much time at work.
Absolutely, yes. And then what results do you think you've seen so far? You mentioned the co-op and Camden Council. What results do you see when you're working with Pausefully?
Well, I work both with businesses directly, and like I say, it's, you know, they start going, oh, you know, we'll do it to tick a box almost, and I'm happy to start that way. But once they see what results are coming when they implement these things in their workplace, they actually, oh my goodness, we need to do more. We need to support more. The team morale, absenteeism goes down, productivity goes up. Just everybody feels so much more supported, and we're breaking those stigmas and having the conversations, and that then has a knock-on effect to people at home as well. And they're raising the question, could it be endometriosis? You know, that 1 in 10 have been diagnosed, but maybe I've got endometriosis, because we're talking about it more. And then they go to their GP and they try and get help as well. And people that maybe have friends that haven't understood it before, and now they're having those sensitive conversations with their friends as well. So
yeah, raising awareness and education seems to be key for me, from what you said and what I've researched. And what about in terms of dealing with intermediaries? Do you work with intermediaries at the moment in a tripartite relationship with the client?
I don't know.
Okay, because that might be something that's worth considering when you're looking at the overall health and wellbeing package, particularly in larger companies. Intermediaries play a valuable part in that service, so that might be something that you want to look at for the future.
I'm always up for collaborations as much as I can to help women and help workplaces. Yeah, I'm all on board.
Great stuff. And before we close, I don't think we've got any questions at the moment apart from the ones I've asked you. Any final thoughts at all?
I would say, you know, a lot of people fear they're going to say the wrong thing. Just just start having the conversations, ask the questions, and start raising awareness, and you will see the impacts it has.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that sums it up perfectly. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and effort in coming to speak to us. As I said at the beginning, we're very much aligned in terms of overall health and well-being and what we do. And no doubt we'll have some conversations with some people after this. It's being recorded, so everyone will get a copy. If they want to get in contact with either myself or with Vicki, then please don't hesitate to do so. We are passionate, both of us, about ensuring the health and well-being of our clients, employees, but also thinking about what it means from an employer basis. So making sure that your staff are loyal, making sure that they are keen to work with the company. And you mentioned retention earlier. That's really, really key. And I think with the change in stigma and the approaches that we've got at the moment, it's really important that people can start talking and understanding, and getting to the point whereby it's a non-stigmatized thing, it's an important thing, and we're looking at the health and well-being for every employee that we're working with.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that. I'm going to call it a day there. We will be having a series of lunch and learns next year, and if anyone's got any topics they want us to discuss, we're more than happy to do so within the healthcare arena. Thank you again, Vicki. Thank you to everyone that's joined us. Been really insightful, really interesting, and certainly opened my mind. So thank you, and we'll see you all again soon.